Welcome to Season 2 of the SOAR podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs who want to build healthier, happier, more profitable self-employed businesses. I'm your host, Rai Hyde Cornell, business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. Get ready to soar. Welcome to the SOAR podcast. On today's episode, which is our last episode of season 2, this topic comes from someone who I had a conversation with on LinkedIn. And she asked a very specific question, which I think is one that all freelancers struggle with at some point in building their businesses and working with clients. And that is how to get clients to stop trying to control you. Now, what this often looks like in practice is a company that you're working with, or a person, if you're working with a solopreneur or entrepreneur who is asking you to work on their business, they tend to have preconceived ideas about what they want the relationship to look like. And if those ideas are not positive, then that can often translate into control of the relationship being in their hands as opposed to in yours. Now, in a successful, healthy business-to-business relationship between you and your client, you want there to be mutual control, mutual respect. You want the things that matter to you to be taken into account in the relationship, and vice versa. The things that actually matter to your client need to be taken into account. And often those are different things, so you can both get what you want at the same time. But how do you know when a client is trying to control you? What does that actually look like? When is that a potentially unhealthy or even toxic relationship? The first is that a client will likely have an air of mistrust. Maybe they've mentioned something about being burned by a freelancer or another company in the past. So they tend to have a foundation of distrust. Another characteristic of this kind of unhealthy relationship is someone trying to control the pay. They really want to compensate you like a W-2 employee or like a gig worker who they found on Fiverr or Upwork. So they will say things like, oh, so for this blog post or this branding package, we pay X amount. Now, sometimes you'll encounter that in the agency arena. If you're working directly with agencies, oftentimes agencies have flat rates that they will pay independent contractors. So that's not always a blatant sort of red flag that you need to be aware of. But when combined with all these other features of the unhealthy relationship, it can start to get very controlling and very toxic, especially in the sense of you not feeling that your time and energy and the service that you're providing to your client is not being reciprocated at an equitable level. So they are asking you to do things, go above and beyond, be very meticulous in the client management. Maybe they're very high maintenance. Maybe they constantly change their mind, and you don't feel like you are getting a pay that is reciprocated on a level. Stumbling to explain this. You're not receiving enough that is equitable with the amount of time and energy that you're pouring into the project. You need to be able to receive at that level where you feel good about how much the project is taking from you. And so if you're working with a client who is really rigid in their pricing structure, or maybe they have unrealistically low expectations for how much something should cost. Like they want a logo for $50 or a blog post for $25 or something ridiculous like that. Then that's when you need to put that in the red flag column. Another sign that a client might be trying to control you or is going to be very difficult to set healthy boundaries with is if they start to impose hours on you. Now, sometimes it makes sense if you are in particularly a VA relationship, or you're providing OBM services or something like that, or even social media services where posts need to go out at a certain time. It's understandable for you to tell a client, hey, I'm going to be working on your project from 2 to 5 p.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can expect me to be online and working on your behalf during those windows. However, if a client tries to say, hey, we need you to work from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day, or from 8 a.m. to noon, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that's not okay. That's not an independent contractor relationship. That's an employee relationship. That's a parameter of employment, and that's not acceptable. You need to make sure that you are making it very clear to your clients, and we'll get more into this here in a little bit, on how to actually set boundaries. But you need to make it very clear that as an independent contractor, you cannot be dictated to in terms of when you do your work. Now, the other facet of this, another characteristic of an unhealthy relationship when a client is trying to control you, is if they are expecting you to be an order taker. This often happens when the client wants to treat you like someone who is beneath them rather than a partner to them. So, for example, let's say you're a designer and your client reaches out to you and says, hey, I need you to do this. It needs to have this, and da 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 da. And they go through this whole list of specs. There's a big difference between sending a message like that, that is placing an order, as opposed to, hey, are you available for this project? This is what we need. The project has these specs. Are you interested in doing that? Are you available to do that? If so, what would the cost be and what would your timeline be? Those are the kinds of requests and project setups that I want you to get used to expecting from a healthy client relationship. So these are some of the signs that you're in a client relationship, or that a client relationship that's just starting is going to turn into one with way too much control in the hands of your client. Now, how do you fix this? Whether you have existing clients or new clients, as with everything, there's a practical side to this and there's an energetic side. So let's talk about the practical first. With new and existing clients, you have to set boundaries. This all comes down to boundaries that you need to decide on prior to the engagement. Now, of course, if you have existing clients who you recognize some of these signs of an unhealthy relationship with, then absolutely you can start to pivot that client into a healthier relationship. Sometimes, though, it might be too far gone. That client relationship, you might have so many months or years of working with that person in that way. They may have been one of your early clients that you started with at a point when you felt like you didn't know what you were doing and you were just glad to have the work. And that client relationship, it may not be salvageable. So if that's the case, you need to decide, am I willing to put up with the way that this client treats me and put up with the established foundation of our relationship in order to have this consistent ongoing revenue? Or is this one that I need to cut? Do I need to remove this relationship, this client from my roster in order to make space for healthier client relationships, ones that are going to pay me more, respect me more, and really treat me like that partner that I want to be? That's a decision that only you can make. And quite honestly, I've been in both situations. There have been times when I've had a client relationship where I think, you know what, this is not ideal. This is not what I want. But you know what? The client, they're easy to manage. I know what to expect at this point. The work is easy. The pay is pretty decent given how much time and energy I need to put into it. So even though they're still seeing me as a freelancer and as an order taker, I'm going to keep them around because I'm going to get what I need out of the relationship. And I'm not going to let the way that they talk to me or treat me impact my self-esteem, my self-awareness of who I am and the value I bring to the world. And when the time is right, I'm going to cut them. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and continue getting what I need out of this relationship. If you decide that, then that is absolutely okay. But you need to protect yourself with an understanding that if a client talks to you a certain way or gives you less than positive feedback or is a little snarky, you can't let that get to you. You have to have that wall up and you have to know, okay, this client, they're on their way out when I feel the time is right. Now, in establishing new relationships with existing clients and new clients, you need to know exactly what boundaries you want to set and you need to enforce them, sometimes to the extreme. Now, I'll give you an example. For the past 6 months, or I should say, about 6 months ago, I decided that I don't want to work on Wednesdays anymore. I always work on Saturday and Sunday because those are my quiet, meeting free days to get creative work done. And I tend to take a half day off on Fridays. I usually will take meetings and do work until about 2 in the afternoon. And then the rest of the day is mine. And I don't do any work or even look at my computer. But if I didn't take another weekday off, I would work 6.5 days straight. So now I've decided that Wednesdays are my day off. And I will take meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Monday and Friday are kind of my overflow days. I do some meetings with specific clients who I've been with for years and years and who nicely, we don't have to be on camera for Zoom calls. And so I can still be in my pajamas and work on Monday and Friday if I want to. But on Wednesdays, I want people to know that I am not available. And so I do have a client who white labels all of our services at Cornell, and they require a lot of meetings per week. I probably do 5 to 12 meetings per week with them or their clients, depending on the project. And they have a super sweet, amazing admin assistant who does all of the scheduling. And I had to tell her, hey, I'm not available on Wednesdays anymore. And if you guys book calls on Wednesdays that you need me on, somebody is going to have to cover for me. And in explaining that, hey, I always work on Saturday and Sunday because those are my days to get creative work done. And I don't take meetings on weekends either. So Wednesday is my one full day off. And I need you guys to respect that. In doing that, not only did I design my schedule to be exactly how I want it. God, I love having Wednesdays off. I get to go into town and run errands when everybody else is at work. Wes and I get to go out to dinners and go do things and see things when there's really nobody out doing those things on a Wednesday of all days. And it's nice for me to have a day off in the middle since I am so introverted. When I have tons of meetings on a Tuesday and tons of meetings on a Thursday, that middle day gives me time to recharge. And so by me designing my schedule and also enforcing that with my clients and my clients seeing that I am very serious and I'm not going to budge on this, I earned their respect in that regard as well. They know that I work hard and that I am reliable and trustworthy in the work that I do. And I can have a day off in the middle of the week without anyone pestering me or questioning that. That's really what the implicit pushing of boundaries translates into is they're questioning if you are reliable, if you are able to do the work that you do in the confines of a period of time that may not line up with someone else's schedule. For example, I know another gal who runs an agency and she prefers to work from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. She does not like to work in the mornings. She is a night owl through and through. Sometimes she works 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. She really enjoys that evening time as her dedicated work block. And a lot of her clients are not like that. A lot of her clients are wrapping up their day when she's just starting hers. But she has that reputation and that foundation and the confidence to be able to say, yep, you will have this by a certain day. And everything happens when she says it's going to happen. Everything that she promises gets done. And because of that, because she follows through on what she is committed to, nobody questions her weird work hours. This is the thing that you have to understand as a service provider. Your clients, the right clients, they expect you to be you. They are hiring you because you're you, because they want the job done in a way that only you can. And therefore, you need to make sure that they understand that if you have scheduling parameters, that those scheduling parameters allow you to be you and do the work that only you can do. That's exactly how I explain it to my clients when I tell them that I do my creative work on Saturdays and Sundays, and they're not going to hear from me on Wednesdays because those are my days off. I have a brilliant designer on our team at Cornell and at Chiron. She does the designs for everything that we do. And she is so good at what she does. I would never impose my expectations or my work hours or any of the parameters that work for me on her because I want her to be her. She's the reason why we have these amazing, gorgeous graphic designs. I'm not going to interfere with that because then she would no longer be able to do what is so special about what she does. So remember that when you are asking for something that seems weird, like Wednesdays off or working from 4 p.m. to midnight, that is what allows you to be you. And you need to make sure that you are choosing parameters based on what is best for you and how you best work. That makes it much easier to set and enforce boundaries. Now, other practical ways to make sure that you are implementing boundaries. Have contracts. You need to set your own terms and you need to tell your clients when you are going to get paid. So let's talk about what this actually looks like, what actual steps you can do to enforce these boundaries once you have decided on what your terms need to be. So first, add the terms to your contract. For example, Cornell is closed for a week in July and for 2 weeks over Christmas, New Year's, and my birthday. That's in our contract. Also, we require payment up front. That is in our contract. We also have late fees if payment doesn't come within 7 days of the due date. That is in our contract. When you put it in writing and you have the client sign that, later on, if they push back on something, you can say, per the terms of our contract, or per the terms of our service agreement, and you have that extra piece of paper that actually serves as a foundation for you two being on the same page. They agreed to that. They pre-consented to these terms. And you can point them back to that prior yes that they made to get them back into line. Another option, particularly for things like when you will respond to emails, when you will have projects completed or things delivered, or when you will be available for messages, is to set up email responders on your days off. There are actually quite a few ladies who I work with who have email autoresponders set up for every single day of the week. Now, if I email them on a Monday and I email them on a Wednesday, I'm not going to get the same message because email autoresponders are typically pretty smart and they will only send that autoresponder message to someone once per week, no matter how many times someone emails that person. But you can have your terms of communication detailed in those emails. For example, one gal I know, she has an email autoresponder that when you email her, you get this message that says, hey, my typical working hours are Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can expect me to respond to your message in those windows. If this is outside of that window, then I will respond to you on the next business day when I am working. Another gal that I know, she has an email autoresponder that says, if you are emailing about this, then you can expect this. If you're emailing about this, then you can expect that. And depending on what the term is, like if you're emailing for tech support or for advice or to book a call or whatever the case may be, she has the protocol detailed right there in the email so someone knows what to expect in return. And what that does is it puts her in the driver's seat. She is saying, hey, I'm not going to jump when you say jump. You can also do this by putting a note in your email signature. I did this a lot in the early days 6 months ago, when I did start taking Wednesdays off. I put a note in my email signature for about 2 months that said, my working days are Thursday through Tuesday. I take calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and creative work is done on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. If you are expecting deliverables, you can expect them to be delivered on Monday. I am not available for calls or emails on Wednesday. And that was it. I also do take half of Fridays off, but I didn't feel like I needed to put that in my message. Just telling people that I was off on Wednesdays was enough to have those boundaries. You can also create a Calendly account or Acuity or whatever the case may be. I like Calendly, but whatever booking tool you use, you need to use it to its fullest purpose. And what I mean by that is often people will create a Calendly account and just automatically they have the link and they just start sending it to people. And they're like, hey, yeah, book a call with me here, book a call with me here. But they don't change the availability hours. So I think by default, Calendly sets your hours to like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. Do you really want people booking calls with you every single day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. willy-nilly? Probably not. So use the tool's capabilities to refine your availability to when you actually want calls. I have all of my kind of like regular ongoing calls with clients on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I don't take any calls on Wednesdays, as I've said before. And on Monday and Friday, I only have these bookend calls for project management for one of our larger clients that I don't have to be on camera. So it really doesn't even feel like a meeting at all to me. And I can often do work in the background during the meeting between when I give them my updates and when I need to listen to updates that pertain to me. So by doing that, I set my availability to only Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then I take a 3-hour break. And then I also have a block from 4 to 6. And that's what I like. That's how I operate best. But the problem is sometimes you will have clients who come to you and they go, hey, I need a meeting or I need to talk about this. Do you have some time on Monday? And then you look at your calendar, not your Calendly, not your Acuity, but you look at your calendar and you go, oh, yeah, actually, I do have time. Yeah, here's what I have available. Let me squeeze you in. Don't do that. Use the Calendly. Even if you are on the phone with someone, pull up your own calendar on Calendly that has the parameters set and tell them what you have available based on what the system shows you. If you look at your calendar, whether it's Google Calendar or iCal or whatever it is, you're going to see a lot more openings than what you should really be offering. And also remember that when you put parameters and containers on when you are available for meetings, you are also going to gradually pace the amount of work that you will be doing. So for example, if you just let anybody book with you at any time and you bend over backwards and you give into that people pleaser-ness about wanting to be available, then what if you have 10 people book in 1 week? All of a sudden you have 10 projects being kicked off all at once. Whereas if you confine your availability so that you only have maybe 6 or 8 spots for meetings in a given week, and if those fill up, then that is on purpose. That's a good thing because then that is an extra layer in the system that allows you to prevent yourself from being overbooked and overworked. If people need to book 2 or 3 weeks out, which is often the case with my calendar, then that's a good thing because otherwise I would be overwhelmed with work all at once. Now, going back to communications, another important thing is to make sure that you're not responding right away. So, for example, with my gal who works from, let's say, 4 p.m. until midnight, if she responds to emails at 6, 7, 8 p.m., what is that going to tell the people that are receiving those emails? It says she's working around the clock. If they don't know that she doesn't actually work from 8 a.m. to 4 and she works from 4 to midnight, then her responding to emails is after their technical hours is going to give them the wrong impression. If you act like you'll jump at any time a client messages you, then they'll get used to that. If you work on weekends or late at night, schedule your email to go out the next morning. I do this all the time when I work on Saturdays and Sundays. I like to clean out my inbox, get my inbox number really, really, really low. But I don't want emails flying out on Saturday and Sunday. And for clients who might also be working on those days to respond and then refill up my inbox, that completely defeats the purpose. So I schedule all of my emails to go out first thing Monday morning. Then it looks to the client like, man, Monday morning at 8:17, I'm getting an email from Rai. She is on it. She is awake and hitting the ground running on the first day of the week. That gives a much better impression. Likewise, if I do decide that I want to respond to a client at 6 o'clock when I'm ending my day on a Tuesday, I will schedule it for the next morning. I'll schedule it for Thursday morning to go out. And that way, they don't see me as someone who's working around the clock and is therefore available to tend to their needs around the clock. This also goes for if a client emails you, and sometimes you'll have a client who emails you and you want to get back to them right away. Like, let's say there's a job opportunity or a new gig that you want to send them a quote on, or you know that you really like this client and they're not one that you really have to worry about with pushing boundaries. In those cases, it's okay to respond right away. But in the case with clients where you really need to set boundaries and you need to make sure that you're not giving them the impression that they own you and you will jump when they say jump, then respond to their email, but don't hit send. Schedule it for 2 hours later, a day later, whatever is appropriate for that client relationship. I do that often. When I get an email right away and I'm really excited and I know exactly how I want to respond, I will just send it, I will schedule it to send 2 to 3 hours later. Now, another area where it's really important to implement boundaries is with payment. So with invoices, sometimes it's hard to be that give me your money hard ass when you're also trying to nurture a healthy and cooperative relationship on the service side. So what you can do is set up a separate email address for your accounts management and give that account a false name. Research has actually shown that people tend to respond better to a male asking for things like payment than a woman. So for a long time, before my husband joined the business full time, I would put his name on the email signature of our accounts manager inbox. Now he actually does manage our accounts receivable. But even if you don't have someone managing that side of your business, separating your hard ass persona from your service provider persona can go a long way. And if you want to try it out with a female name like Margie or Susan or whatever you want that's separate from your name, and then try a couple months of the name being James, or in my case, Wes, whatever you want to try, and see if there's a difference in how people respond to you. Depending on your client base, they may or may not respond better to a male. Maybe they actually do respond better to a female. See what works best, because ultimately, the entire purpose of all of these boundaries and all of these practical things that you can put in place is to make sure that your business is running better, more efficiently, and is serving you and supporting you better. You should not be constantly scrambling to support your business. Now, one more thing on the practical side that you can do is to tell clients that you are booked out or have other things going on here and there. Drop hints. Oftentimes, especially if you're still in the habit of describing yourself as a freelancer, or if clients think of you as a freelancer, they think that you're some starving artist who will jump at any opportunity for a project. And even if that's the case, you don't want them to feel that sense of desperation and yes, sir-ness about it. You don't want to be a yes man, a yes woman. So if a client is asking, let's say you're having a conversation with the client about a new potential project, and you get to the timeline question, you go, okay, so I have a few things booked out on my calendar for the next 5 to 10 days. When are you thinking that you need this project completed? Set the expectation, set this air of, I'm busy. I have other things going on. You are not my sole client. You are not my only priority. And I have other people who are respectfully purchasing my services, and I have them booked out. They are slotted on my calendar. This is how I tend to do things. I do not do 24-hour turnarounds. I do not do 48-hour turnarounds. And once you have that buffer, that expectation of typical turnaround times are 7 to 10 days, or whatever the case may be that's right for your business, you also need to think about, establish, and enforce rush fees for projects if they do want them turned around in an unreasonable amount of time. And big if you want to do the work at all. Let's say you have a client who comes to you and says, hey, I need this PDF designed, and I need it in about 3 days. You can respond with, well, normally I need about 7 to 10 days to do a PDF layout, given the existing projects that I have queued up. If you would like me to move something around so that I can get this into you sooner, then there's going to be a rush fee of 20%, or a rush fee of $500 or $425, or whatever you want to say. Making sure that they know you have a system, you have an operation, you have other commitments, and they need to pay for that preferential treatment to cut the line. That's how you handle those clients who expect quick turnarounds and are trying to put you in that order taker, you serve me sort of role. Now, all of these things might seem possibly excessively rigid. The goal is not to constantly be worrying about clients pushing boundaries and for you to constantly be having to defend yourself or create this sense of being larger than you actually are. That's not the goal. The goal is for you to practice establishing and holding boundaries so that you can do your best work in the time that is best for you and in the working relationships that are most nurturing to you. And this is not an ongoing conversation that you need to have. Yes, you will need to set up these boundaries with new clients and new engagements, new partners. But once you establish those boundaries and people know the way that you work, you really won't have to talk about it ever again. My entire team at the company that I work with that often white labels Cornell's services, and therefore it's a bit of a confusing and tangled relationship because we do work for them as well as for their clients, but they all know I'm not available on Wednesdays. And if they book a project kickoff call on a Wednesday, I send them the deck ahead of time, and one of them handles the meeting and then sends me notes afterwards. They know that now. And all I had to do was tell them, I don't work on Wednesdays. I'm just not available. And I will always make sure that you guys have what you need. If you need to do things on a Wednesday, I'll make sure you have those by Monday or Tuesday, but I'm not available for calls. And now they understand that and they respect that, and we don't have to talk about it every day or every week or every month. It just is. So those are a lot of the practical things that you can put in place. Now, one last thing that I want to talk to you about, as with everything that we do here at Chiron, is there's an energetic side to this as well. And energetics often sneak up on us in the language that we use. So with new clients, know what to look for. Are they looking for someone who is a freelancer? Are they using the word freelancer? Are they using the word independent contractor? Are they using the words agency or partner? Look at the language that they are using, because that will often give you a lot of insight into the kind of relationship that they're expecting. If they're expecting a freelancer, most likely they are treating you as an individual with a very flexible, open, fluid schedule, and someone who will jump at any gig, any project to fill because they are a freelancer. Now, if they are looking for someone who's an independent contractor, usually that is a much better linguistic setup for a healthy relationship because they know you are not an employee. The opposite of employee is independent contractor. So if they use that language, you're probably going to be in really good shape. They are going to know that they cannot impose employment parameters on you, like your pay, when you will do your work, how you will do your work. They will know ahead of time that since you're an independent contractor, you get to set the parameters on all of those things. When they use the language agency or partner, that is perfect. That is the ideal, because if they are looking at you as a partner, they are looking at you as an equal, that they have something that you want and you have something that they want. That is the perfect relationship. And partner implies a sense of respect, that they respect the work that you do and they want to partner with you to benefit from that skill set that you have. And in return, you will benefit from them paying you at the level of a respectable partner. Another linguistic thing that you can use is we language. We carries a lot more weight and implies a sense of organization, of systems, of relationships that are going on behind the scenes that allow you to do the work that you do. Even if you are solo, if you plan to have someone like a VA on your team or an assistant or someone that you outsource projects to, you can start using we language to set the foundation for that expectation in the future. Now, if you want to be known as a company of one, if you want to be known as the one and only in your organization, then don't use we language. It's going to feel out of integrity and it's going to do more harm than good, especially if clients ask, so who's we? You've mentioned we. Do you have an assistant? Do you have an apprentice? Do you have an accounting manager? Whatever the case may be. Make sure you're only using the we language if it feels right for you. But if it does, it can go a long way to making sure that clients know that there's more going on behind the scenes than they know about. And that usually also implies, because if they're coming from an organization like a business, whether small, medium, large enterprise, they will know that when there's more people involved, then systems, timelines, expectations, those all need to be more established and respected than if it is just one person who can often be interpreted as very flexible. All of this is to say, you need to be a business, not an individual. Unless there is some personal reason why you really want to stay in that persona of being a freelancer or being the one, the artist, then you need to be a business. When you're a business, you're doing business with other businesses. That's B2B. And that sets you up for a much healthier relationship. Once you embody that energy, you will attract in the right clients. We attract what we are. So if you are being codependent, if you're being submissive, if you're lacking confidence, if you are being a child to the parent company being your client and you being the child in that relationship to them, then you are going to attract in more of those unhealthy relationships where clients tend to want to control you because you're giving them that air, that vibe of, I need to be controlled. I'm unsure. I'm uncertain. I'm unstructured. I'm unpredictable. I need someone to impose structure and boundaries for me. If you want to have those healthy client relationships where you're treated like an independent, reliable, high value partner, then act like one. Be independent, break the mold, be confident in your choices, be self-sufficient, be trustworthy, but also conscious of boundaries. Be strong in your terms and your boundaries, and you will attract in businesses that are the same and that respect you for your boundaries and your unique way of working. And if this is something you struggle with, especially the confidence aspect, then check out my workshop, How to Beat Imposter Syndrome for Life. This often comes down to us feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm too new. I'm too green. I haven't worked with any big established businesses. I've only worked with friends and family. And, that one person that I went to summer camp with that one time, that person's dad reached out to me for some website copy or some design. So I've never really worked with an established business. All of that comes down to imposter syndrome. Also, if you feel like your confidence issues, your boundary abilities are compromised or just not where you want them to be, or maybe you have a particular client where you're like, yeah, all of this sounds great in practice, or I'm sorry, in theory, Ray, but actually with this one particular client, I don't know how I'm going to implement this stuff in practice. Then reach out to me directly if you want to work through this stuff one-on-one in private mentoring. This is exactly what I'm here for. So please reach out. Let's get your mindset right. Let's get your confidence built up. Let's get your boundaries clear and established so that you can stop bending and flexing to everybody that you work with and start really holding your own, taking up space, and being that established, reliable business that people respect and respond to differently than an individual, than a freelancer, than a gig worker. It's all up to you. This is entirely within your control. I know in these sorts of situations, it's easy to feel like, oh, this is how clients treat me, and oh, clients suck, and oh, I'm never going to be taken seriously. That's not the case. It's all about the vibe that you exude, and it's all about how you see yourself first. And if you change how you see yourself and you change how you portray yourself to the world, then clients will fall in line. All right. Think about these things, implement them in your business, and soar. Hey, Ray here again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcasting platform. Want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at chironconsulting.us/podcast.